You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest, Cletus Alengna, who is lawyer, managing partner, S&A Law Consultancy, who led Dr. Papa Kwesi Nduom's GN Savings and Loans Bank to the court. I think at the beginning, Justice Shremsai, whilst he was not Deputy Attorney General, and then Alengna took over after that. Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. They have also issued their verdict on the repression of free speech. Those of you who think this is the first time they are doing it, you are not in town at all. They have been doing this for a very long time. Bobby Banson is lawyer and lecturer, Ghana School of Law at Makola. And right here, Senyor Hosi, convener, One Ghana Movement, finance and economic policy analyst. To my extreme left is Andrew Ejapamesa, who is also a lawyer, former MP, second D, former Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture. He was also in the Energy Ministry. I'll be had after Senyor here is Inus Afuseni, former MP, Tamale Central, and former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. He was also the Minister for Roads at the time. Dr. Nana Kweku Nduom, President, Group Nduom Ghana, also joins us. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for making time to join us here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right. So let's begin with Kweku. Kweku, good morning. Thank you very much for making time to join us.
Good morning. Good morning from Elmina.
Great.
It's great to be.
Great. Now, before we hear you, let's listen to your dad, Dr. Papa Kwesi Nduom, and a couple of comments around the sweet victory that you just chalked in the Court of Appeal this week.
It's been a difficult, very difficult 7 years. We want to thank family. We want to thank all of our employees. We've had some very loyal, hardworking employees who have stood with us all these years. And definitely we give thanks to Almighty for keeping us healthy enough to be where we are. Because this has been a very tough, very difficult time that we have gone through. It's just unimaginable. There's a lot to say, but not today. At the appropriate time, we look forward to the press conference to go through what we have experienced and the difficulties moving forward. What I want to say also is that we are in a very good political environment. That environment has brought about a wind of change. And we are expecting that with the license restored, that we will now play our part in making sure that this country achieves the level of prosperity that is needed. There are just too many difficulties. Some people have died. Some have lost their jobs. Assets have been destroyed.
All right, so that's Dr. Papa Kwesi Nduom. It's been 7 years of being in the courts, going through High Court, Supreme Court, going to Court of Appeal, and now this is where you are. Kweku, congratulations on this unanimous Court of Appeal victory. The court described the Bank of Ghana's 2019 revocation of your license as unfair, unreasonable. From where you sit, your perspective, what specific facts or arguments finally convinced the appellate judges where the High Court previously fell short?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good morning once again to you, your panel, and all the listeners in Ghana and around the world. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to be on this platform, and obviously happy that it's under these circumstances. And as Dr. Nduom said, it's been an extremely difficult period for our employees, our families, our customers, and other stakeholders. I'm glad that we have this opportunity to rebuild. Our lawyer who's going to be on or who is on the program will be better suited to give the legal explanation. But the crux of the matter in lay terms to me is that it was untrue that the institution was insolvent and unable to pay its obligations. It was actually on the advice of the Bank of Ghana that we opted to reclassify as a savings and loan institution. And there were a number of requirements that we were obligated to fulfill when we reclassified. We were very diligent in meeting those requirements, and we had made significant progress within the 8 months between the reclassification and the revocation. So it came as quite a shock to us when we heard that the license had been revoked after all the work that we had put in place. So I believe the appellate court just recognized the situation for what it was and acted accordingly.
Mm. Well, so you're right, and Cletus is here. He will speak to the legal question. But you have consistently maintained that your financial struggles were directly caused by the government and its contractors who were owing you billions. How does this ruling vindicate your stance on who actually owed whom?
Yes. Well, so this ruling definitely provides some level of vindication. And it was no secret that in 2017, lots of contracts were put on hold so that the government could review and conduct whatever investigations they wanted to conduct. And that had a significant impact on not only the contractors, but the entities that financed them. But, this practice is not a new thing. I mean, we've been financing contracts for several years. And, over the past decade and a half or so, up to 10 billion CDs of contracts that we financed. And we've selected those contracts very, very diligently and specifically. We looked for contracts that were sponsored by entities such as Akufo-Addo that had a history of paying them on time. And, so every 4 years or every time there's a new administration, they do this process of reviewing contracts to make sure that things are okay. And normally what happens is that they pay after that review period, they resume payments. But this time around, those contracts were reviewed. And even though they weren't seen to be or deemed to be fraudulent, they were not resumed for a lot of contractors, including many of our contractors. And that played a major role in the liquidity issues that many financial institutions suffered from. I mean, if you look at us, we had over 300 million Ghana Cedis in just IPCs. And that was just the face value. And as you may know, if IPCs aren't paid on time, they accrue statutory interest. So if that money, just the IPCs, was paid, we wouldn't be having the conversation that we're having now. We wouldn't have had to reclassify to a savings and loan company in the first place. Okay, so during this process, there were some deliberate lies put out there about the money that was at stake. I mean, we had set up a team with the Ministry of Finance. We spent several hours, tens of hours, sitting down with the Ministry of Finance. We had an independent audit of our portfolio, and we delivered all of this information. And at the last minute, somehow they decided to write a letter to Bank of Ghana saying that it was only 30 million Ghana Cedis that was due to us, a bold-faced lie. And that was one of the key pieces of evidence that was used against us in revoking the license.
Mm. I know one small micro, finance institution, that's a different story, that was said to be insolvent and the license revoked. But guess what? It is its own resources, money that was sitting there, that was used to pay off all its customers. Its assets remained untouched, and it had a good balance still sitting in its accounts. So I asked myself, what happened? It looked like a clear mistake. Well, let's come to you. You have described the last 7 years as incredibly painful. Can you talk us, tell us about the human costs of this shutdown, specifically the thousands of jobs or job losses that we have heard Dr. Papa Kwesi Nduom speak about, and some members of your team also speak about, the job losses across your branches, the impact it has had on everyday Ghanaian depositors who believed in the GN brand.
Yes. So, at one point, GN Bank and its affiliates had direct and indirect employment of employees of over 5,000 people. Okay, and so up to around January 2019, before the reclassification, we had 3,000 employees working in and around GM Bank. So when we reclassified, we had to go down to about 1,600. Okay, and then when the license was revoked, those 1,600 jobs, direct jobs, disappeared. Then we had about 1,200 indirect jobs. We had 4 security personnel for each branch. We had a cleaner for each branch. Multiply that by 300 branches. And you can see that that's a very significant personal toll. And each of those individuals has people that they support. So when you multiply it out, you can see that the total impact was quite significant. And then you also have, within the group, we had a lot of our institutions who
do this multiplication and give us an idea. Give us a rough idea. What are we looking at?
Oh, I mean, I'd say about 4,500 direct and indirect jobs. And then, but then you also, it's not even just the jobs that were lost, but the impact on the operations of the institutions, including our institutions who banked at the bank, because our deposits were basically lean. So the companies that the group Nduom companies that invested in or deposited with GN Savings had their money lean for several years, and that also had an impact on their operations.
You fought through the human rights courts, the Supreme Court, the High Court, the Court of Appeal. There were many moments where the door seemed firmly shut against you. Tell us, what kept you and your team fighting when many expected you to give up?
Well, that's a very good question. I think when you look at the comments of the people who are looking at some of these articles that have come up, a lot of people mention the strength and determination of Dr. Nduom. And I think that it was his leadership and his energy and persistence that has really inspired and amazed all of us. I mean, we've heard a lot of people come to us and say that they were just amazed at how we managed to keep our heads up through this whole period. But yeah, the reality of it is that our heads weren't necessarily up the whole time. It was extremely difficult for him, for all of us. But I think it was just the belief that we had done something positive by building this institution, and that it was built for the right reasons, that we had taken the right actions to try and grow that organization that kept us optimistic and relentless in pursuing justice.
The court has ordered an immediate handback of all your possession, management, and control of assets to your shareholders. Practically speaking, people are asking, how do you expect this handover to work, given that some assets may have been liquidated, transferred, or degraded over the last 6-7 years?
Yes, well, it's definitely true, and I think one of the things that we've tried to put out there over the years is the extent to which, I mean, we haven't even needed to do that much work. If you drive around the country, people can see the branches are still there, the signs are still there, and they can see the condition of those branches. We have pictures and videos of vehicles, generators, motorcycles that are rusting, that have just been exposed to the elements, and a lot of them are no longer around. I mean, places where you would have seen 100 or 200 cars parked, if you go there today, you'll see 4 or 5 cars. So a lot of the assets have been disposed of. We are waiting for the detailed instructions from the court. They did make some comments during the ruling that there were some third parties that would have acquired some of these assets, and that if those acquisitions were made in good faith, that there's not much that can be done. But for those that weren't, that some action could be taken to recover them. But it's going to be a long and complicated process to try and restore what was had, just because so much time has passed,
right,
and so much has happened.
You are boldly pledged to restore the business and make it even better than the first time. What are the first 3 tactical steps that you intend to take to fiscally reopen doors And what's your message to former customers whose funds have been tied up?
Okay, so in terms of the first three steps, I mean, I think number one, you want to make sure that you have the right team in place. Well, obviously, we have to sit down with the stakeholders. We have to sit down with Bank of Ghana. We have to sit down with the receiver, and I think so that's a given. But we need to make sure that we have a competent, experienced team in place whose values are aligned with the values of the group, and they will participate in really planning and directing the way forward. So I think that's number one, is the right team. Number two is going to be the right systems, both the physical infrastructure and the technological infrastructure. And I think we have most of those resources in place. Ghana isn't the only place where we've done banking, so we are aware of and have participated in the movement from brick and mortar banking to digital banking. So making sure that we have all the tools in place would be number two, technologically and physically. And then I think number three would be that the surrounding infrastructure, the corporate governance, the board of directors, and the relationship with regulators and other stakeholders needs to be in place and needs to be very strong. We need to make sure that people understand and believe that things are being done in the best interest of the consumers. In terms of the customers who have been affected by this whole thing, we believe that a vast majority of them have been paid their money. We hope that that is the case. What we've been told is that most of them have been paid. For those of them that haven't been paid, or if there's anything that we need to do to help ensure that people are made whole in case they aren't, we would obviously do what we can to accelerate that. I think everybody who was involved regrets how this thing went down, and we hope we can restore everything for everyone, not just us.
Okay, thank you. My very final question perhaps to you is whether you recognize that this your victory reopens this intense national debate over the entire 2018-2019 banking sector cleanup. Whether you recognize the question that it throws up about how the Bank of Ghana may have acted wrongly against many other victims of the shutdown. I just gave one example that a while ago.
Yes. Well, this whole cleanup was it was very, very painful for a lot of people. I have friends who were caught up in this thing, and they were affected very personally. And I think that there's a lot of anger by the people who felt that they were treated unfairly. I just hope that, it's good that these questions are being asked. I hope that the answers can be found in a way that is with a sense of urgency, but then also in an unbiased fashion. I think what we all want is the right thing to be done. We want the truth to come out. Some of the statements that were made against us and others have followed us for years. If you look at the statement that Bank of Ghana put against us, it canceled. We lost deals. We lost tens of millions of dollars in terms of deals that we could have had. And time again, people have pointed to those statements made against us. So we are not the only ones who have suffered so greatly from some of the allegations and statements that were made. So I just hope that that others will have a similar experience of being able to have the truth be put out there. And in the cases where they were right, that it should be recognized and they should have their due justice.
All right. Thank you very much, Kweku, for making time to be with us. And as you said, as I understand, you are in a Lemina and something nice is happening there because your dad is supposed to be leading a graduation process, right?
That's right. Yeah, this will be the fourth or fifth graduation and matriculation at the Nduom School of Business and Technology. So we will be attending there to celebrate the graduates and welcome the new matriculants.
All right. You do have a good day. Thank you very much. Now let me return to the studio. And but before I do that, let me show you this promise that President Mahama made in the lead up to the campaign about, because we don't want it to be limited to the Nduom group only, but to the others who are now up in arms, asking that they should be paid, because the president promised them that they will be paid within 1 year if they voted the NDC back into power. Listen to the president.
To hear government officials justify the huge amounts it is spending to manage the impact of the collapse of Ghanaian financial institutions, which they now put at a whopping 21 billion Ghana cedis. I weep for the many who have lost their jobs, the many who have lost their jobs, the many who have lost their businesses, and the many who have lost their livelihoods as a result of these policies. I pledge on behalf of the NDC that we shall, within 1 year of being in office, pay all funds that have been locked up with the collapsed financial institutions. Within our first year in office, we shall pay to all the beneficiaries all funds locked up in the collapsed financial institutions. It is a promise. We shall not put together any long-term payment plan that will further worsen the living conditions of the victims.
Right, what a sweet promise, Mr. President. Within 1 year. It was within the 1 year that Evans Mensah put this question to the finance minister. Let's hear him, Akufo-Addo.
Ask him about those whose funds are locked up. And this is from the banking cleanup that happened. A lot of the banks went under. It appears from this message that there are a lot of people still whose funds are locked up. They haven't received their funds. When are they going to get them?
So, Evans, let me be blunt here. I have fundamental problems with this particular issue. First, government has no business in collapsing companies and taking liabilities and using 30 billion cedis of taxpayers' money to fund it. It is so wrong. So wrong. One, government isn't a shareholder. So I'm not talking of state-owned banks. I'm talking of private businesses that have collected people's deposit. And for some interesting reason, they have failed to honor the terms of the agreement they had. And that all of a sudden, the state should pay. Granted that the state is paying another 20, 30 billion. You know what will happen? I will not be able to do these allocations that I'm doing. For schools, for hospitals, and all. So what is the opportunity cost? This is a country that is just coming from debt distress. Am I going to borrow another 10 billion and saddle the state with additional debt? Whilst a businessman who has collected this money and has run away? No way. No way. I don't think I have to run state's resources like that. My view, if care is not taken and we go that route, business owners will collect depositors' money and go at large, and the state would take that responsibility. In fact, we shouldn't have started that at all. We should have gone after the assets. Previously, they should have gone after those assets. And they should have, and that is why there's central bank. And that is why you have some payment you have to put there. When we were leaving office in 2015, we set up the Depositors Insurance Scheme and all to provide a system. The state cannot be paying this. And the taxpayer cannot be used as punching bag all the time. At any time somebody set up a microfinance or savings and loan company, they run it aground and they just go and a central bank move in and collapse it and transfer the debt to the Ministry of Finance to pay. Am I going to stop paying school feeding? Am I going to stop paying capitation grant? Because the money must come from somewhere. The money must come from somewhere. Tell me, what am I cutting to pay the person who gave his investment to a private person to mismanage? So I have fundamental issues with that. I think government has no business in going into that and be taking those responsibilities to pay. In fact, we do not even have the money to do that.
Yeah. So basically, for those who may have money so locked, anything for them, anything.
So I think for them, the central bank, who is the regulator, must get involved and to recover those assets and to use those assets to settle them.
Right, so that's the finance minister against what the president has said. We don't want to limit the discussion only to the GN Bank because the groups have been asking in the course of the week what's happening to the promise to pay them all, according to the president, and that they were not going to do the payment in some structured manner, one of just sort everybody out. So let me begin with Japan Mesa, GN Bank celebrating a victory, and then also those who lost their, and got a promise from the government.
Thank you. Let me say good morning to my colleagues who are with me on the panel this morning, and our cherished viewers and listeners. And even before I start, to take opportunity of a platform to wish my boss, my good friend and brother, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, a very happy and glorious birthday. He turns 58 today, and I can only wish him the best of what he desires.
And our sincere condolences to you and your family as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You see, Samson, personally, I felt a lot of empathy for the Nduom group and what befell them. When the decision was delivered last couple of days, I felt pretty much, well, if the Court of Appeal is minded to set aside the decision of the High Court, consistent with due process, why not? Then I read the post on Facebook by the spokesperson or the deputy spokesperson to the president, who posted, I am actually happy.
Who are you quoting?
Shamima Muslim. I'm actually happy for the GN group. We should be supporting the growth of Ghanaian businesses, not collapsing them without recourse. President Mahama is not a vindictive leader. And I said, hold on a minute. What is the spokesperson at the presidency telling Ghanaians? That it was as a result of the non-vindictiveness of the president, the reason for the outcome of the decision by the Court of Appeal. So I managed to find the High Court judgment, and I've read it. And I feel sad that Kweku Nduom this morning is trying to play victim and suggesting that some falsehood was put out there as basis for revoking the license of GN Savings and Loans. He says that they were not insolvent and that they were in a position to pay their debt as and when they fell due. Essentially painting a picture as if to say that there was some witch hunting that the government of Ghana had to take to, as it were, resolve these banks.
At least 3 judges at the Court of Appeal agree with him.
Same way 3 judges at the Court of Appeal agreed with the Akufo-Addo case. But the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, set the appeal aside and restored the High Court judgment. I don't want to preempt what the outcome would be, because I would be extremely surprised that the Bank of Ghana would not appeal this High Court decision. You see, interestingly, when I perused the judgment, And when I relate it to some of the things that...
You mean the High Court judgment?
The High Court judgment. This is what the court said in reference to GN banks or savings and loans inability to pay its depositors when they visited the bank to withdraw their monies. It said at page 39, a typical situation can be seen from Exhibit YAO 1, 2, and 3, where third parties had petitioned the first respondent, and the first respondent is the Bank of Ghana, to intervene in retrieving their funds from the third respondent, which is GN Savings and Loans. The applicants, which is Dr. Nduom and his group, trivialized these exhibits by contending that they are insignificant in the conclusion by the first respondent and the third respondent was insolvent. So the evidence that was adduced before the court that even small sums of monies that were being demanded from GN Bank, they could not pay. The law is clear as to how you classify an agency or an entity that is insolvent. That if it is unable to pay its debt as and when they fall due. So the court concluded that even if you could not even pay these small sums of money that were being sought by these depositors, how are you then going to be in a position to pay the big obligations that you owed? Indeed, and in fact, the court proceeded to indicate that, assuming without admitting that the IPCs that Nduom's company claimed that its sister company held were all reconciled, still it was not in a position to meet its obligations.
IPCs are interim payment certificates.
So it wasn't as
monies the state owed contractors.
Yes, and it wasn't as if all these factors were not considered. The court took pains to go through all of them and arrived at the conclusion that the Bank of Ghana had taken a decision consistent with the provisions of Section 16 of the Banks and Special Deposit Taking Institutions Act in closing down, GN Savings.
Unfortunately, due process, the High Court's decision has gone to a court of appeal.
I don't have a problem.
And the three wise men
interestingly,
have shut it down.
Interestingly, it turned out that the lawyers for Dr. Pakwesi Nduom and his group was Justice Shremsai, the current Deputy Attorney General. Now I'm told that when, and indeed and in fact, Nduom and his group sued the Bank of Ghana, the Attorney General and the GN Savings and Loans Company Limited, in this case, the receiver. The Attorney General at the Court of First Instance filed the defense because the state had been sued to protect the state's interest. Bank of Ghana filed a response to the application. The receiver also filed an application.
You are referring to in the previous regime?
In the Court of First Instance.
In the previous regime?
In the previous regime. It turns out, however, that on appeal, the Attorney General did not file even a single paper. So then I go back to Shamima Muslim's post and ask, is it the case that this is something that has been concocted to have the Court of Appeal set aside the High Court decision, the reason why the Attorney General of the Republic failed to defend the interest of the Republic at the Court of Appeal?
The High Court decision you are referring to is dated when?
It's dated 24th January 2024. At the time,
so hold on. It's important. You have said that. January 2024.
Yes.
You know that the appeal would have been filed in 2024, correct?
Yes.
So who didn't defend the Republic?
That's why I said I'm told. So let us see the decision, the full decision of the Court of Appeal, so that we can interrogate these things further. Because if what I'm being told, and this came from the lawyer of the Bank of Ghana, is indeed the truth, then it will make sense why anybody will conclude that the president is not a vindictive leader. Otherwise, how would it the case that a court of competent jurisdiction has made a determination in a matter and it is being attributed to the non-vindictiveness of the president? I cannot understand. But like I said, look, if the court is minded to set aside a high court decision, I do not have a difficulty at all. But to want to claim victim when the facts of the matter doesn't support it, is it claiming victim or is it claiming victim? Look, is it claiming victim or celebrating the victory they have secured from the court? I'm entitled to construe his response. And remember that you sought to impute again that the Deputy Attorney General, formerly of the law firm that had led this process, and so the Attorney General did not put up a defense. And my question to you is that if the decision was delivered in January of 2024, within 3 months, the appeal would have been lodged.
Not necessarily. You can seek leave for extension of time. So let's find out.
We'll come back.
So let's find out.
Wait.
When indeed the appeal was filed, because we do not have...
No. The appeal would not have been filed out of time. But you just hold on. The lawyer is on the line.
Very well.
I'll get to him.
Very well.
The appeal would have been filed within 2024. And the Attorney General who should have defended it would be the Attorney General of your party in government. So how does that work? The way you are seeking to...
So that's fine. Like I said, I'm prepared to await the full reasoned decision of the Court of Appeal. I indicated that I'm being told, okay, so if what I've put out is incorrect, then it sounds to reason that my source may be incorrect. But where it came from, I'm inclined to believe that that is indeed what transpired. But that's beside the point. I'm saying that...
No, but before that point, before the next point you make, you also know that in our courts, even if the other party does not file their arguments, the courts don't take the one who filed this argument as sacrosanct. Yeah. So you have situations where somebody has filed the process before the court and the other party didn't file and they still lose.
I agree.
Okay, now go on with your next point.
But the coincidences is what is striking. Okay? Now, the insolvency bit was not the only grounds on which the Bank of Ghana revoked the license of GN Bank.
Okay.
In fact, the statement that the Bank of Ghana issued on 16th August 2019, which announced the revocation of the license of not only GN Bank, but 22 others, it listed several other infractions that GN Bank had committed. None of those were challenged before the court. None of them. The related party transactions were not challenged. 83% of GM Bank's loan book had actually gone to related parties. It wasn't challenged. The transfers of $62 million from GN Bank to International Business Solutions, another company owned by Group Nduom, which is based in the USA, for purposes of acquiring a bank in the States, was not challenged. The structure of its balance sheet was not challenged. Its negative capital adequacy ratio of 61.20% was not challenged. When the prudential requirement is at 13%, positive 13%, you had negative 61.20 capital adequacy ratio. How was the Bank of Ghana, in its right regulatory frame of mind, going to allow you to proceed to exist? So why are we being told that Mr. Nduom and his group were victims under the circumstances under which their licenses were revoked?
So you disagree with the courts? That's what you want to say?
Like I said, I'm a lawyer. To the extent that their decision has not been challenged, that's what is prevailing. But then again, what the court said when it delivered its judgments was only a 2-paragraph statement, which is to the effect that we hold that if the trial court had probably averted its mind to the burden of proof and the evidence adduced by the appellant, it would have arrived at a different conclusion. Revocation was not justified and was unreasonable. Appeal succeeds. That's what the court said.
The decision of first responder for the first license of third responder is hereby called up for purpose of being quashed, and same is quashed. Restore license to third respondent. Receiver to immediately hand over control of assets and management of assets to the third respondent. Assets of third respondent shall be handed over at the current state and not at the state when the receiver took over. This is essentially what the court said. But the court cannot give this and leave it hanging. They will have to give a reasoned decision, which we don't know when it's going to come up. But if it certainly comes, it will afford us all the opportunity to interrogate to see whether indeed the court of first instance did not apply the evidential rules appropriately or otherwise.
Thank you. Let me go to Cletus. Cletus, you have some questions to answer raised by Ejapa Mensah. And as you may also see, people are asking questions because Dr. Nduom has been applauding John Mahama, has been thanking him. And in one of his recent comments, he says, gratitude to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama for the promise he made as a presidential candidate to return banks collapsed unjustly and for creating an enabling and positive social and economic environment in the country. You will recall that when the decision was given, as Dr. Nduom stepped out of court and journalists, sought interviews with him, one of the lines of his response was a good regime, a praise for the government. What do you say? That this cannot be exactly, divorced from, as in the presidential temperature, cannot be divorced from what has happened in the courtroom.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. And good morning to all the panel in the studio. Samson, when BOG was revoking the license of GN savings and loans, they did it by a letter. And so, if the government wanted to restore the license as promised, they didn't have to wait for the court to give its decision. Upon assumption of office, the government could have issued a letter and then restored GN savings and loans license, and then they would have started operating by now. That is not what happened. We were in court, and we have been in court since 2019, gone through all the processes until the court finally delivered its judgment on Thursday, saying that the decision that was taken by the Bank of Ghana was wrong. And so I don't think we can, by any stretch of imagination, link it to any promise made by any person prior to elections or thereafter. This is purely a legal battle which has ended where we ended on Thursday.
Or coincidence, you mean? Pure coincidence?
Well, I wouldn't even call it coincidence because the government has not done anything to restore the license. That was the promise, but that is not how it has been done. Okay. What has happened is that the court has rather ordered BOG to restore the license. There are two different things altogether. BOG could have, on their own, restored the license if they wanted to. But that was not what has happened. In fact, BOG, when we were in court, as at the last minute, BOG still challenged and defended their decision that they were right in revoking the license, and the Court of Appeal disagreed with them. And so it's not as if the government has restored the license. No, the court has ordered BOG to restore the license. That is what has happened.
Okay.
And I think we ought to be very clear.
You just mentioned a defense. Tying that one properly to as a response to Ejapa Mensah about what he says he's learning, that the states, per the Attorney General, appear to have allowed you some, free room to score.
I don't think the state has allowed us any free room to score. If you look at what we took to court, our main claims were actually against the Bank of Ghana, because it was a human rights action which was insisted that the decision taken by the Bank of Ghana was irrational and it in breach of the applicant's right to administrative justice, their right to property, and other things. The Attorney General was just added as a nominal defendant. They were not the main purpose. They were not the main defendants of the case. Bank of Ghana at all material times was the main defendant.
In fact,
the receiver because...
In fact, in the human rights action, by our rules, I think that you may just be required to notify the Attorney General in this case and not to make them a party, right?
That is correct. You can notify the Attorney General, but instead of notifying, you can also add the Attorney General because once a human right, it's a public law action.
That's
and
right.
the Attorney General has the right to intervene. And so the practice has been, the rule says you should notify them. But the practice for some people have been just to add them as a party so that if they want to defend, they defend. If they don't want to, they stay out and allow the actual parties to do their matter. So as I was explaining, BOG was the main thing because it's the BOG's decision that we were seeking to quash. And so the BOG was the main respondent to the action. And BOG filed defenses up to the Court of Appeal, filed their written submissions. In fact, they were out of time. They had to come to the court to seek leave to file their written submissions out of time, which we did not even oppose. And then they filed their written submissions, and the court determined the matter on its merits. And so it's not as if somebody just sat somewhere and then allowed the process to go in one favor. That's not what's happening.
So you are confirming that the Attorney General did not file any, as it were, arguments in this matter?
What I can confirm is that in the Court of Appeal, the Attorney General did not file written submissions. That is a fact.
When was the appeal filed?
The appeal was filed on the 29th of January 2024.
Okay.
29th of January 2024. That was when the appeal was filed within time. It wasn't filed out of time. They didn't have to seek leave to file the appeal.
How do you respond to the imputation that Justice Stremsai was Nduom's lawyer? I mean, you guys work together. How do you respond to that? And that may have influenced why there was no Attorney General response, even though your last answer appears to be a good answer already.
I mean, I do not think that has any consequence or any impact on the matters that were being tried in court. Even at the trial court, when the Attorney General filed submissions, you read them and you see that it's almost like a replica of the same thing that the BOG was saying. They were not saying anything different. Probably that's why they thought it wise not to waste resources to be repeating the same thing again. Because it's the same thing that the BOG was saying, that they were saying. Because and something when you sue the AG about something that the state institution had done, the AG would go and seek responses from that state institution, to be able to file their response. And so what the AG was saying was, in essence, the information that Bank of Ghana has given them. And so their written submissions, the two of them were filing, their defenses and submissions were basically the same. They were not different. And so probably that is why maybe they thought it wise not to waste resources when we finished the matter at the High Court and then allowed the BOG, which was the main respondent, to defend the action to its latter. Okay.
But you can confirm to us that as we speak, you do not work from Justice Stremsai's firm, right?
Samson, I'm the managing partner of SNA Law and Consultancy. I do not work in Justice Stremsai's firm.
Okay, thank you. Now, to the substantive, a bit of the substantive points. You are saying that the facts that Japan Mensah, speaks to in the High Court decision, where your client's bank, the balance sheet was not impugned. The balance sheet of your client, which was negative, and confirmed that they were insolvent and so on and so forth, there was no evidence to counter it. What do you say to that? That is the main thing. So why is it that the Court of Appeal will overturn the decision?
So let me take it systematically. There are two provisions under Act 930 under which the Bank of Ghana can revoke a license of a financial institution. One is Section 16. Under Section 16, the Bank of Ghana will have to give the supposed defaulter notice of the default and then require them to make amends. It's only when that is not done that the Bank of Ghana can revoke the license. The other section is Section 123. And Section 123, the Bank of Ghana doesn't even have a choice. It is titled mandatory revocation. And the only grounds under which Bank of Ghana can revoke a license under 123 is insolvency. It's either the financial institution is insolvent or the financial institution will be insolvent in the next 60 days. That is the only reason. And when that happens, the Bank of Ghana doesn't have a choice. They have to revoke, and they do not even give you notice. You just wake up in the morning and you hear the notice, which is what happened in this case. You wake up in the morning and the notice was all in the media that the bank has the license had been revoked, even before the management of GM Bank even became officially notified by it. And so I think Honorable Mesa said the Bank of Ghana was actually revoking under Section 16. The revocation was not done under Section 16. It was done under Section 123. That is a very clear difference that we should make. 2, indeed, he mentions that the Bank of Ghana mentioned so many factors under which they revoked the license. And I think that's part of the argument we made in court, because the right to administrative justice requires that when a decision maker is making a decision, he must take into consideration only relevant matters and leave out all irrelevant matters. And so once you come under Section 123, the only thing you must consider is whether the bank is insolvent or not. Any other factors are irrelevant. If you want to go use those other factors to revoke the license, you come under Section 16, you give the person a hearing, let the person give why ABC has happened, and then you can make your decision. But once you come under Section 123, all other matters are irrelevant. And indeed, all the things that the Bank of Ghana mentioned, which Honorable Japa Mesa also retreated, the law actually provides a punishment for all of them. For example, if you look at Section 33, it provides a remedy for breaching the capital adequacy ratio, which is an administrative fine. If you look at Section 64, it provides a remedy for breaches of financial exposure to related parties, which is also an administrative fine. If you look at Section, what do you call it? Section 94, it provides a penalty for failure to publish audited accounts, which is an administrative fine. So all the things that Bank of Ghana were saying, the law actually provides a remedy for them. So that was not the relevant thing, and that's one of the things we pointed out to court. That's not the reason why they said we will revoke the license. So all those matters were even irrelevant. What is the relevance of the matter? The relevance of the matter is that, was the bank solvent at the time the license was revoked? And that is what we argue, that the institution was not insolvent. And it is because the Bank of Ghana failed to take into consideration all the assets owned by the institution. Because when you are talking about insolvency, there are two ways. It's either the law itself defines it. It's either you are unable to pay your liabilities when they fall due, or your liabilities exceed your assets. None of them were present. The exhibits that Mr. Japa mentioned that the court says if they have taken those exhibits into consideration, they would have come to the conclusion the bank was not insolvent. And that's actually the point that we had made from day one, that all those IPCs, debt owed by government, which had been admitted previously, all those ones were discounted. And the Bank of Ghana now came back to tell us that all what they could confirm was some 30 million Ghana cedis. And indeed, something, when they wrote to GN Bank, GN Savings and Loans, that they could confirm 30 million, GN responded and told them that we disagree with you because the money we are talking about is in excess of hundreds of millions. And so if anything at all, let us sit down and reconcile our accounts. Then let's move from there. BOG did not respond to that letter. And in less than a week after that letter, the license was revoked. Okay. So that's actually what happened. So it's not as if the Court of Appeal is doing anything. There is the evidence we put before the Court of Appeal that the Court of Appeal looked and said that indeed, if the bank had taken these matters into consideration, they would have come to the conclusion that the bank was not insolvent. Let me respond to the exhibits you mentioned from the High Court ruling. Quickly. The exhibit YA01, 2, and 3. YA01 was Bank of Ghana's own letter that they had provided some support to the savings and loans company, and that they will require them to make payment later. It wasn't a demand that was not met because they were not immediately required to make that payment. 1A02 and 1A03 are petitions that the Bank of Ghana alleged they had received from some depositors who said they were going to access their funds and they couldn't access them. These matters were never brought to the attention of the GM Bank for them to even respond whether indeed the people came and they didn't get their money or not. And that's what we made in court. Because when the Bank of Ghana received it, they never brought it to the attention. Okay. I mean, if you receive a petition that the person cannot pay, bring it to attention and let's confirm that indeed we can pay. But that was not what happened.
All right. Thank you very much. But perhaps a final question to you, Cletus. Well, certainly, I don't know, but you may have been a bit surprised that the decision was unanimous in your favor. But practically, that's the question people are asking. Practically, how's this going to happen? Because some of the assets have been liquidated, have been sold, and so on and so forth. Some of them, they have changed, their character have changed, and so on. Yep.
Yeah, something I think first of all, I wasn't surprised that the decision was unanimous. I wasn't surprised because we believed in the arguments that we put before the court, and we were very convinced that the court of appeal will be convinced by the argument. So yes, we were not surprised that the decision was unanimous. Yes. Secondly, the court of appeal itself took judicial notice of the fact that the receiver has been in charge of the assets of the company for 7 years, and some might have changed hands into third-party hands. So the court of appeal actually made orders specifically in respect of that, and said that for assets that are currently in the hands of third parties, we need, if the third parties acquire them in good faith, then they should be entitled to them. But if they do not acquire them in good faith, then we will be entitled to them. So essentially what it means is that any person who has acquired any interest in any of the assets of GN Savings and Loans, we have to take all of them on a case-by-case basis and then look at how.
So the proceeds realized from those acquisitions will now be paid to your clients, or you lose that?
So the receiver will now have to tell us where those proceeds are, because he is the one who was dealing with them.
Okay.
So he has to tell us where those proceeds are. If those proceeds are still available with him, it will definitely form part of the assets of the company, which he will have to return all of them back to the company.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Or is there's something which is critical you want to say a word about before you take leave?
If you permit me to.
You take leave of us. Okay. Let us respond to this question from Ejapa Mensah.
You see, this assertion that the IPCs, Bank of Ghana, did not take them into consideration is not borne out by the facts as contained in the judgment of the High Court. Indeed, and in fact, at page 41 of the decision, this is what the court said. Further, the applicants, per paragraph 30 of their supporting affidavit, contend that the failure of the first respondent and the Minister of Finance to present the true position of government's indebtedness to the third applicant, thereby leading to the revocation of the third respondent's license, was actuated by malice. The applicants particularized the said malice among others as follows. I will not bore you with the details. I note that the applicant's assertion in paragraph 30A and B, which relates to the 664 million and 900 million IPCs, right, were not substantiated by any form of evidence to those effect. The applicants, however, chose to exhibit before this court exhibit PKN 11 in support of their third ground of allegation of malice. According to the applicants, per their PKN 11, the first respondent should be deemed to have conceded that the third applicant had some IPCs to its credit, or that it had a right to same, for which reason the first respondent ought to have factored same. This, and the court proceeded to produce a letter which was addressed to GN Savings and Loans, okay, in response to a request by GN Savings and Loans for a proposed repayment of their obligation to Bank of Ghana in the sum of 197 million. Bank of Ghana rejected that. It turned out that at the time that this letter was, and they made reference to a defunct bank, GN Savings and Loans at the time was not defunct. And the court addressed all of these things in the decision. So to suggest that there was some IPCs which you did not provide any evidence to substantiate beats my mind.
But what you are talking about now is what the three other judges in the Court of Appeal
I don't have a problem.
disagree
that's what I'm
and
saying.
have rejected and shut down.
That's what I'm saying. But of course, the Court of First Instance was seized with the evidence. Now, that's what the court
But the
found.
Court of Appeal reviews that evidence.
No problem. I'm prepared to await the reasoned decision of the Court of Appeal.
All right.
So we can interrogate them. But I'm saying that at the Court of First Instance, it was established that GN Bank did not provide any evidence to substantiate its claim.
Right. Cletus, in 30 seconds. Let's have your response in 30 seconds.
So I can understand, because he's making reference to exhibits that he has not seen. And I can understand, because when you read the judgment, you only make reference to exhibits, but you won't see them. So it is not true that we did not provide evidence. Exhibit PKN2 series, which alone formed one volume of the Record of Appeal, IPCs that we attached. What the court was saying was that the BOG and the Ministry of Finance had disagreed or discounted those ones and said that for them, the only thing they can confirm is 30 million. And that is what the court rejected the evidence. It's not as if we did not provide the evidence. The court did not rather rejected the evidence that we put before it. And so it is not as if and then he made reference to Exhibit PK11. He made reference to Exhibit PK11. Exhibit PK11 was a letter by the Bank of Ghana to GN Savings and Loans to assign some of these IPCs to the Bank of Ghana for indue payment of some debt owed to the Bank of Ghana. And so the argument we put before the court was that if the Bank of Ghana was disputing these IPCs, why will it be requesting the GN Savings and Loans to assign these same IPCs, which they are now disputing, to them in due payment for debt owed to the bank?
Okay.
So that is the reference of the
So the Bank of Ghana wanted to assume the obligation of settling those debts for. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you very much, Cletus. Thank you.
And that's PK11, the letter from the Bank of Ghana he referenced.
Thank you.
That is what it says.
Thank you. Interesting to know that the IPCs alone form one volume of the appeal records. For those of you who understand, you know how this looks like. Right. So, Honorable Minister of Seni, what do you say? This is sweet victory. Cletus, are you there?
I'm still here.
Okay. In another 30 seconds, finally. There are those who are suggesting that this clearly will not be the end of the road for you. And Ejapa just said a while ago that he will be surprised if this is not appealed.
Well, I mean, I think, as he himself has said, I think that may be a little prejudicial because he hasn't seen the judgment yet. Maybe when the Bank of Ghana, when he reads the judgment itself, he might change his position on that. So, of course, it's the Bank of Ghana's right if they want to go further to the Supreme Court. That is their right, and which we can't contend that. But, I mean, we are confident that probably when they read the judgment, they will come to the irresistible conclusion that there's no point going further on this matter, and that
Thank you.
Should rather end here.
Thank you very much for your time. Cletus Alegna is the lawyer for the GN Savings and Loans that have been successful at the Court of Appeal. Yes, Honorable Minister of Seni.
So, Samson, it's important to state that this action, and to congratulate the lawyers because they fought a battle to which they were committed, and they fought it for 7 years. I mean, you must believe in the case of your client to follow a case for 7 years.
No, but this also tells you another story about our courts and the delays that are occasioned, because it shouldn't take 7 years. These are important matters. They can be dealt with expeditiously.
Well, I'm not.
Now that some of the properties have been dissipated, liquidated, all of this.
I'm saying that you must believe in your client's
case. I get that.
To follow that case. And two, to put it beyond doubt, that the Attorney General was not part of this case. This case is founded on Article 23 of the Constitution. And for the benefit of my friend, let me read Article 23. And you will see exactly why the judge used the words unfairly and unreasonable. Administrative bodies and administrative officials shall act fairly and reasonably and comply with the requirements imposed on them by law, and persons aggrieved by the exercise of such acts and decisions shall have the right to seek redress before a court or a tribunal. So this was an administrative action by the Bank of Ghana. And that's why the action, Article 23, is part of Chapter 5 of the Constitution.
You know why I'm laughing?
No.
You know why I'm smiling? You know I'm involved in some of these cases, right?
Yes.
And we have one situation where we have a counterclaim, where we have raised all these issues. Yes. So I'm excited. Please go.
So,
but on this discussion, I'm a disinterested party. I'll be frank with you.
So you must understand that when the judge says that the decision was unfair and unreasonable, he's recalling Article 23 of the Constitution, taking all the circumstances into consideration. Now, so the Attorney General doesn't come in. Whatever you play, whether he filed or not filed, it's a decision. You have to treat that body as if it's a person. That body that takes the administrative decision as if it's a person. Now, let's come back to it. I have a fundamental problem with the way MPP went about the financial sector cleanup. I have a fundamental problem. Fundamental. And most people had that problem. So these were Ghanaian businesses. They obviously were suffering.
The financial system was crashing.
It was crashing. But was that the best option? How much was at stake? When they did when they did the audit, how much was at stake? Was it not 9 billion?
That debate has come up over and again, and
was it not 9 billion?
The Prime Minister has debated me here to show any report that proves that point.
So how did we get to the 9 billion? How did we all come to accept that?
That's the propaganda that you guys.
No, it's not a propaganda.
Show us
so it's a propaganda that Kobna Japan also put out.
Kobna Japan put out what?
9 billion.
Yeah, he believed in that position.
So let's see the document.
Instead of spending 30 billion, instead of spending 30 billion to collapse the banks,
I don't have a difficulty.
You could have used 9 billion to rather resuscitate them.
For 9 years.
What was brought?
Nobody has seen that document.
Yeah, that's a point of view. Please.
Let's see it.
Now pause. It's okay. Thank you for your intervention. Now go on. It's a legitimate question he raises. Please go on.
So that's the first thing. So the banks were impaired. The government thought, the Bank of Ghana thought that it had a duty, and it's rightly so in their law, to protect depositors' savings. The impairment was 9 billion. Even if the impairment was 21 billion or 30 billion, did you have to collapse those banks? Was it the policy? I mean, did it make sense to collapse Ghanaian businesses because of impairment and pay the money to depositors?
So the 9 billion is the figure of impairment.
Impairment. Okay. But they did that. That should tell you the policy incoherence. I mean, and it's not only in Ghana that banks have been impaired. If you look across the world, even in the United States of America, the first major decision Obama had to take when he won election was how to ease the financial impairment of institutions, because it has national security implications. You're talking about the employment, the jobs of people who will be lost. You were talking about the businesses of citizens which will collapse. So, as a party, we never believed that that was the most appropriate decision to take. That's the first thing. The second one. Do you know that, and we're talking about Nduom's savings and loans company. Do you know that in discussions leading to the collapse of Group Nduom, and especially the bank, the MPP itself had decided that the savings and loans should not go. In negotiations with Nduom, they thought that they should save.
They actually just reclassified
the savings and loans.
Downgraded them from a bank to. That's what
they did. So it was not, again, at that point, a capital adequacy ratio. Because they themselves had agreed that because of the reach of Nduom, the financial inclusion that they were bringing to the banking system in Ghana, which furthers the policy of the Bank of Ghana, they thought that Nduom should continue to operate as a loan and savings. So what was it that overnight they changed their decision? When they had communicated that to Nduom. Was it bad faith? Was it malice? What was it? We still do not know. Now you've given the example of the microfinance, and I can give you many other examples
We had an MPP, was it an MP or someone like that, former MP, who also said its finance institution was not insolvent, but by mistake. When they were doing the mass thing, it also suffered.
So I can give you, there are many examples. So what were they pursuing? We still do not know. And that is why this victory, even though has got repercussions, because many people are now going to go back and interrogate, examine the steps that were taken to collapse their banks, whether they were fair and reasonable. Many people are going to go back and look at them. And this is a human rights matter. And when they go, they will not be closed. They will have, the banks will not, the courts will not foreclose their doors.
No, human rights action, we did one recently. Human rights action, they can take other routes. But if they want to take a human rights action, the date of revocation is what they have to use to count the timeline.
Yes.
And the timeline is long gone. There's no room. The Court of Appeal, Supreme Court have been emphatic on that.
They will find
once the time runs out, the door is shut.
They will find a way to
opening. So you can find some other means, but not use a human rights action.
So they will find other means of challenging.
Okay.
Because now this opened the Pandora's box. That we know that decision, or some of the decisions they took, were unreasonable and unfair. We now know. The Court of Appeal says that. Now, you find a Japan and a very senior lawyer referring copiously to judgments of the High Courts. Japan, as we sit here, you know, as a matter of fact, that until the Supreme Court restores that judgment has been reversed. You can only use that judgment for academic purposes. But it holds no water now. So whatever is contained in that judgment today cannot vindicate or, disapprove of what the Court of Appeal has said. So let's look forward and see how going forward, a decision of this nature will cost the country and the banking sector. Clearly, this introduces another unknown quantity in the financial sector.
What do you mean?
Why? The licenses have been granted. You think that confidence will return to Group Nduom? Who knows what the future government will do?
They will definitely come in a different shape and name, not in the same name.
You understand? So it destroys the fundamental confidence that people have in the banking system.
But there's one small bit of this before I come to say you know that when these actions happen, the shareholders, the directors, they are all affected. And there's actually a ban on them from engaging in this business any further. Does this decision automatically also reverse that? Is that your...
That's my yes.
Okay.
And it means that they didn't do anything wrong. But let's not run away from the fact. I said it when the matter was still hot. That yes, when bankers receive depositors, they owe us a fiduciary responsibility, a duty to manage the funds in such a way that they don't impair our resources. But because they are humans, that's why we have the Bank of Ghana to periodically look into the activities of the banks and ensure that they're not conducting their affairs in such a way as to disadvantage their clients. So the blame actually falls at the doorstep of the Bank of Ghana. And like Prempe says, H.K. Prempe, that you find some regulatory volatility depending on who is there. Then depending on who is the Bank of Ghana, the laws are being implemented in a way that is not consistent. And lack of consistency destroys or breaches, the trust of people, citizens, in institutions like the Bank of Ghana, like the banks and all that. So for me, this is welcome news, but clearly there's more work to be done.
Let me hear from these two gentlemen quickly, and then we will take a break. And when we return, I'll take your brief comments on the sweet campaign promise that the president made, and Akufo-Addo's complete, what's that? They say we don't say 360, about 10. Yes, say on.
You know, this story is a very difficult one. You know, I really want to see the court's decision. We all can't wait because it also has implications.
We know the bottom line of the decision.
No, but the reasoning is very important. It actually situates the conversation differently. I read the High Court's judgment, and for me as an economic policy analyst and a businessman, and also an investor in the sector, I own a fund management company. We followed all the things that were happening. They were not healthy things. I have respect for Group Nduom. If I lost any of it, it was because of the prudential activities I observed from their operations. So the legal issue is one for the lawyers to discuss, but the Constitution is right. What my big brother referred to is really critical. But we also have to situate the constitutional responsibility of the central bank. The central bank has a responsibility not just to direct, but and that's not just a matter of discretion. It has a clear responsibility to act independently to ensure the stability of our financial system. We were in dire times, and something had to be done. We may not have even had a country. It would have been a total chaos when your financial system goes down. It was a major national security risk. I think that the central bank had to definitely do something. Everybody knew it. You can't be a fair operator, an objective operator in this conversation in the financial sector and say that that was not a reality. People could not get their money. People were going to banks. We're going to some of these institutions. They couldn't withdraw their cash. We're going to these savings and loans companies. We're going to these non-bank financial institutions, and people could just not get their money. People had made investment, could not withdraw it. That was chaos being nurtured. It was DKM quadruple. It was whatever it is. Please, let's not lose sight of the reality of the time. You take the GM Bank situation. The prudential breaches were so depressing, and respectfully, for it to be coming from somebody we held in so much high esteem, as far as economics and finance is concerned, as somebody as Nduom, was for me very depressing. I lost faith in names on the back of that. I lost faith in pastors on the back of the things that happened at that time. And this is the honest fact. How do you lend to your own company 80% of your loan book? You carry deposited funds and you play God that you are the only one who has the best sense on how to use and turn money around. Lend money to yourself. You don't do that. It's not honest. Go and look for a DFA. Go and look at what a DFA has done with his business. We built this business. Look at how organically it's grown. For a DFA self to borrow money, he goes to another bank. Look, you have to be responsible because you are carrying the deposits of other people. Yeah. They were not responsible. Finito. But withdrawing license and all that, and that process, I hear the lawyer. Nobody in all honesty can say that it wasn't public information that you could not withdraw. You people were having problems with withdrawing cash from GN Bank. People were. They closed down 70 or so of their branches at a certain point in time. People were genuinely struggling. If the central bank did not manage this case in court well, that one is a legal matter. But we can't sit here and say honestly, we did not know of stories of people struggling to withdraw money in any of these institutions. It was public fact. What are the rules for insolvency? Your negative net asset situation, or you clearly have difficulty paying your depositors.
or earning your liabilities when they fall due. I think it's a 60-day window or so. It was stressful. And it's not as though this central bank woke up one morning and decided that just get the hell out of here. They were going through a process. That's why they moved them from being a bank to coming to being a savings and loan, appointing an advisor to be with them and walk them through. You get to a point where you see that the team, it is the going is not coming. And when the going is not coming, there must only be a stopping. So that's what happened. But the legal issues as to whether...
You're not suggesting that the central bank was infallible. And there have been issues that have been raised.
I'm not.
And I've had the opportunity to question those as well. That those in that institution that were complicit in some of the wrongdoings that were flagged. Have you heard of any single person who has taken a fall for it?
You know, that is the problem. I'm going to the next one. So you let me I mean, for me, one by one. So look, there was an action.
That is the regulatory volatility I'm talking about.
The other key problem, before you even go to that point, Samson, is the complicity of the central bank. We had a crisis, agreed. But did we have to regulate the industry to the point where we had to now trigger this kind of issue? Where was supervision?
Yeah.
Because you should have flagged this problem way ahead. You don't allow Group Nduom to get into this situation. You should have stopped them if you were supervising and looking into their books. That is your role as a regulator. It's not just to correct problems, it's actually to preempt and prevent them as well. The Bank of Ghana must face and be honest about it. It failed. And it's a cumulative thing. Because if we are talking about things happening in 2018, this whole problem did not just happen in 2017 and 2018. It's been growing. Because there is some complicity in there where people, you see, again, this is the problem with Alaji. This idea of Ghanaian people best, you want to just protect their business. Please, we end up running this theory into destroying our governance and financial systems. When people are being irresponsible, you crack the whip. You take steps to prevent it. But when people are sustaining that irresponsibility, ill acts, you deal with them. The central bank was seeing these problems. It was not dealing with them. My arguments and my issues on
actually giving them more money.
We're giving people money. I mean, look, guys, let's face it.
No, we agree with you. I agree with you. But there's a difference between collapsing the banks and dealing with the people. There's a difference.
Again, I agree with you again on that one.
There's a difference.
I mean, I don't think that the central bank's options in trying to correct problems itself had contributed to by failing to optimize its regulation.
Yeah.
Those options were not optimal. You know, they were not optimal. They took some steps. There are some of them that were right, trying to merge some of the banks at the time so that we could actually maybe, it was okay, get the books back, because still you have to pump money to clean up some part of the books.
Sure.
I mean, I would approach it differently, but those again are policy choices. I want to believe that we hopefully should have learned from it. Now, with all this, we come back and we say we spent 25 or 30 billion cedis, right?
More. Billion.
All right, I wouldn't have spent 30 billion cedis to cure it for my policy options. Yeah. You may think that is the option, but that spend was also necessary to bring real relief to real lives. People's monies were in these institutions. I won't do that because I want to face it. I don't want people taking their money out. I'd rather be looking at how to keep all the institutions back and deal with the actors. You know, there was a need to separate the institution and its social exposure, socio-economic impact and relevance to society from the ill acts of the directive minds of the institutions. But in some instances, the central bank took that policy option. Others, they took a different option. But whatever it is, the train has left the station. So we can only learn from that past. But this debate about the 9 billion and then the 30 billion, 9 billion is impairment. It does not necessarily mean that you wouldn't take 30 billion to fix it. But we need to really audit the matter and then come to some clarity. Maybe we have to request something from the central bank. What do you call that one? The rights that we have, right to information, RTI. And then let them come clear so we bury this matter. But the problem definitely had to be solved.
Okay.
I will be shocked if the central bank will ever pass Akufo-Addo or any of those directors of that time as fit and proper to run any bank or any financial institution in this country. This does not absolve them.
If they are cleared,
no. This giving you your license, no, you don't get it. fit and proper access. Look at the prudential breaches. None of them were addressed, just like Mensah said. The core of the conversation really now is procedural. It's really procedural. It's not really about the facts of the matter.
You get the point, yeah.
Exactly.
It's procedural.
It's exactly procedural.
Yeah.
When the people were not getting the money, did you officially inform the people? Did you go through a certain process to establish the reasonableness which you are referring to?
Right.
All right. But materially, that was a reality. So you are using procedural techniques and gimmicks to establish a strong legal, and I don't have a problem. That's you do your job. That's why you guys earn income. So as long as I don't have a problem. But me as a policy person, as a businessman, we have to look at the reality and the substance of the matter. So did we have that problem? We did.
A man has been sentenced to, as it were, killing by euthanasia. And then you decide to take a gun and shoot him before they take him to the spread.
That is possibly the matter.
You have committed a wrong. The court will tell you that you have done a wrong.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that he was not going to be killed.
Exactly.
That's not going to die by himself.
So it doesn't mean that the man hadn't committed a crime, but you didn't manage the process right because you're not authorized to actually shoot him. You did something different. So something else happens. But it does not clean up the liabilities of those what you call the governance liabilities of those directors and directing minds of that institution. You can't be doing a negative 61% what you call the capital adequacy ratio. You can't be lending 84% to your own companies in breach of all the Bank of Ghana prudential rules. And you know, the thing that pains me the most, we have used taxpayers' money to do this, and we still can't find people held properly liable for all this.
That is exactly the case. You see, I have issues with
that's another problem. You spent money, 30 billion. Just
you've not held the directors responsible.
Where are the people?
Where are the people? That's the problem.
Where are the people? Then we go around and there's some people.
You don't know where the people are.
Where are the people?
Have you dealt with them? Have you forgotten?
I haven't forgotten.
And so why are you asking where are the people?
No,
the people have all been set free by this kind of government.
How many people?
Are you asking me?
Look, we had over 400 institutions or so which were struggling.
And guys, Ejapa is saying something that we need to pay attention to. We're told that the Dufour group, they were going to pay 60%, and so we should find a way to confirm that these payments or recoveries have actually happened after they were let go. Yeah, Sule, well, let's bring you in here.
Charlie, it's people's money. It is the people of Ghana, our money.
30 billion of it.
Aye. And as if nothing happened in this country.
This government took the MPP government took the flag.
All of you are inside. Your two parties,
part
all
of the
inside.
reason the economy's shock absorbers were not strong to help us. Well, and now look at where we are.
Samson, let me start by saying that this whole banking sector cleanup at some point has always been a political issue. With the MPP blaming the inadequacies of the NDC, the then John Mahama NDC regime, for all the things that had happened under in the banking sector. And therefore, they needed to take the decisions that they took. Now, I think it's important to also point out that, assuming that was the case, that the recklessness and all that had happened under the previous regime, Governor Addison took over in April 2017. And if you look at the revocation letter that my brother here, Ejapa, was reading, it was in August 2019.
Yeah, so what you are watching now is Dr. Papakwesi Nduom on his page on Facebook, thanking a number of people. He's titled it Gratitude. This is gratitude number 1. You see number 2, number 3, number 4, and Ejapa raises issues with some of them because they are direct, thank you to, like this one, to Togbe Afede, Utumfo, and several other people, Archbishop Duncan Williams and other bishops, and then there's a one to the president and so on and so forth, Anyway.
Yeah, so Samson, the point I was making is that Governor Addison took over in April 2017. And the closure, for example, this letter that Ejapa was reading,
was dated August 2019. So we're talking about almost 2 years. Within that 2-year period of, let's say, supervisory enhancement, and all of that, what happened? Was it that even under the MPP, under Addison, a lot of the things that allowed for our banking sector to get to where it got to was allowed to continue? Because if it is the case, then obviously you cannot say that it is just because the previous regime was not doing the supervision thing that we are talking about. So I am saying this to affirm and support the idea that fundamentally there was a supervision problem. And there is a reason why they are regulators. There are reasons why your law practice is regulated, education sector is regulated, health sector is regulated, so that the regulator plays an oversight role to ensure that the right things are done. So I agree fundamentally that the supervision didn't happen. And if we are talking about where are the people who did not play the roles that they ought to have played, it is not just those in the banking sector or the collapsed banks, but I think that even those at the Bank of Ghana who didn't do their work, we need to look at that.
100%.
But be that as it may,
100%.
We were confronted with a situation similar to what as Lawyer Nduom talked about in the US, where the banking sector was in deep crisis. People had behaved recklessly and all of that. In the US, they chose to do a bailout. We chose to do a shutdown or collapse.
After a period of bailouts. That's what we did.
Yes, after a period.
Yeah.
No, we have been bailouts.
A measured bailout.
There was a measure. There was liquidity support going to a number of these institutions.
Right.
So it had been procedural.
Okay.
No, but if there was liquidity support, that support doesn't just go and say use it as
I know.
It comes as an intervention,
Listen
and the
to
intervention would come with procedures, restrictions,
and personnel. In America, and personnel. Supervision.
Like you suggested, you deal with the people and not the system.
Exactly. So that liquidity intervention that we talk about, if those liquidity interventions were extended and what happened continued to happen, then that's even worse.
So like the time when they were putting some of them into administration, then you give the money, take the people out and put new people in.
Exactly.
Or you police those who are...
No, you just take them out. The policing started. That's why you give an advisor. It wasn't working. So ideally, that's why I said I would take a different policy option.
All right.
So take out the directors. Wipe out the shareholders because they have lost their capital from their own management. And then make sure the social infrastructure, the socio-economic infrastructure of banking is still available to the people.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's another level of failure. Yeah. And which is even a worse failure.
Thank you.
But I'm saying that in the US, they chose a bailout versus our collapse it. And if you look at the debates
in America, collapsed.
They collapsed. Lehman Brothers had to go.
Look, if you follow the debate
in UK, Northern Rock collapsed.
Those who could not be bailed out.
Yes, those who could. Yes, of course, there are some that you cannot just do anything about them.
They collapsed.
But look at the effects. It is not as though in the US everybody supported that the bailout was the way out, because people said, look, there are banking CEOs who were living on fat bonuses and so on and so forth. And to bail their banks out is basically to incentivize whatever they had done. But the counter argument was that to say that therefore you have to collapse the banks as we did would have serious ramifications in terms of access to credit, in terms of the mortgage market, in terms of capital access, and so on and so forth. And the consequences will be dire versus if you were to take the other route. And therefore, they decided to do the bailout. And of course, the economy was rebuilt and all of that. There were also questions in the US about what is going to happen to those who supervised the recklessness or who supervised all this. Now, prosecutors eventually said, in terms of criminal conduct, they couldn't really find anything they can substantiate. What they found was that there was unethical conduct, there was recklessness, there was mismanagement, and so on and so forth. And that's why, even in the US, you ask the same question. The people who led the banks and got them to the situation that they got to, and Obama had to do the bailout, what happened to them? You couldn't find anybody going to jail.
I'm not too sure about that.
I mean, we can interrogate
people.
And look.
He's read the Obama book.
And look into that. But you see, Samson, I think that I do support the view that perhaps a better approach could have been used. Because the ramifications of what happened, not just in terms of the economy, the impact on the economy, because the MPP at the time would say, look, the toll that the country had to bear in terms of how much we had to invest to ensure that livelihoods are supported and all of that affected, the entire economy. And in terms of why we got to the economic crisis that we were in, the banking sector collapse is always often cited. But could it have been done in such a way that we wouldn't have put ourselves in that situation?
All right.
Because you look at the number of people who lost their jobs, the families who, and eventually, as we even speak, there are people who haven't still gotten their monies. And that is what President Mahama had.
Dr. Nduom talks about those who have died as a result.
Exactly. And so many people
if you manage the bank honorably and
when you are going to Bolaga, see the group in Nduom.
Yes.
I mean,
all over.
Banking is like oil. It's like a filling station. You can't leave the filling station to just manage yourself anyhow. Because when that filling station is gone, people need to move. It has a socio-economic value. That's why supervision of the banking sector
is important.
It's critical. And the Bank of Ghana failed.
Yes, the Bank of Ghana failed. Absolutely, I agree. And I hear you about the management, imprudence on the part of the Nduom group and so on and so forth. I don't have basis to say that. You are a finance person, but of course, as you rightly said, the facts that were relied on by the High Court to come to that conclusion, as we speak, the appeals court basically has put that aside or maybe quashed it to say, look, the evidence we have and reviewing whatever we reviewed, does not support the conclusion.
Procedurally.
That was procedurally. But until we see the full judgment, even the point Senor makes about it being procedural, I don't think we can make a definitive conclusion.
The lawyer said it.
Until we have
their lawyer said
the benefit
their lawyer
of
said
that.
it.
But I think this decision also helps.
The rule of law also deals with procedure.
In revealing a lot about what had happened in the banking sector and for us to even interrogate further. I am sure perhaps other banks who were also collapsed may even be motivated by these decisions to say that, we didn't take any action, but looking at what had happened in the legal processes on this, perhaps we should also begin to activate certain processes. So maybe we are
That's why I pointed out that there are parts that you can take, and some of them, the time is completely out. You will not be allowed. All right?
Yeah.
And particularly for human rights action, which Dr. Nduom took, was parallel with other actions that were going on. Nobody can take this kind of action anymore. Right. All right.
But maybe finally, I have a question and a comment. Because I heard the lawyer say that the appeal was filed in January 2024. And so this point about the AG did not file any response and so on, how come between January to December 2024, when the MPP was in power, Dame as AG did not, does it mean Dame did not file anything? And if so,
I mean, actually, he said it in the gist. Because when you look at Article 23 of the Constitution, you don't need the Attorney General.
No. But saying
that took the administrative decision.
I get that. But Honorable Mesa here is a lawyer. And he has he raised an issue about why the AG not, filing any response and all of that. And I'm asking, what could have been the reason why between January 2024, when the appeal was filed, to December 2024, Dame, as AG, did not, why was it that we didn't have anything from Dame?
So as the explanation was given, if we are not doing politics or the partisan politics, there's absolutely nothing wrong.
Nothing.
Because by the human rights actions, you are actually just supposed to notify the agency
but I guess Honorable Mesa,
and sometimes we include them.
With you on that.
No, he doesn't. Because that's the law.
Because if
sometimes we include them.
No, in the High Court case, the AG
Did.
Yes, but what the lawyer was saying, the AG simply repeated what the Bank of Ghana or the receiver had to do.
I don't think that's entirely.
No, but the point you were seeking to make earlier
I'm coming.
has been found not to be accurate.
Not a problem. Let's await the decision of the Court of Appeal. Why the AG filed in the High Court was because the Nduom Group had extended their claim to the Ministry of Finance, not only the Bank of Ghana. As it was important for the Attorney General to defend the Ministry of Finance in the action that had been brought at the High Court. Okay. But you see, Samson, the banking sector cost, right? I don't think that anybody in the Akufo-Addo administration just felt that they had to incur that cost.
Okay, so we are not going another round. We need to take a break now. When we return,
but please, before I go, a little correction on the American situation. I mean, I'm taking this from the National Whistleblowers website. There were 400 criminal charges, 300 prison sentences, and 11 billion. And on the civil side, there was a record payment made by most of the banks.
Recovery.
The big boys themselves, most of them escaped.
All right. So when we return, gentlemen, thank you, gentlemen. When we return, briefly about the promise to sort out all the victims, very briefly. And then we'll go on to the question whether or not speech, free speech, whether there is freedom before speech and freedom after speech, always. We'll be right back.
And I will say to you that this year is going to be special for everybody associated with Group Indo. Many things are happening and will happen, positive ones, that even though for 7 or so years we went into difficulty, there's a resilience, there's a courage within our family of companies that have continued all sorts of other things so that. And God has given us life, strength, so that we would be here to continue the good works. So as I look around this campus, where it sits now, the state it is in now, that's not where we had planned it to be. We have a job that is not complete. And so from this year going forward, we intend to complete the job.
Government officials justify the huge amount it is spending to manage the impact of the collapse of Ghanaian financial institutions, which they now put at a whopping 21 billion Ghana cedis. I weep for the many who have lost their jobs. The many who have lost their jobs, the many who have lost their businesses, and the many who have lost their livelihoods as a result of these policies. I pledge on behalf of the NDC that we shall, within 1 year of being in office, pay all funds that have been locked up with the collapsed financial institutions. Within our first year in office, we shall pay to all the beneficiaries all funds locked up in the collapsed financial institutions. It is a promise. We shall not put together any long-term payment plan that will further worsen the living conditions of the victims.
Right. So yes, you heard the president. 1 year, they will sort out everybody. This is where we are. The guys have been clamoring. They are threatening demonstrations and others. Because the finance minister says, I can't do this.
The finance minister is not lying. He hasn't got fiscal space for this. He actually is looking at creating maybe a 1% of GDP space for massive capital investments to reset the economy. Already they've created stability, and I've said what we've achieved now is stability. We need to move.
The president didn't suggest this to him before he said it.
So there's this story, I'm sure you've heard about it already, about this man who went to heaven. And then when he reached there, they said they have to show him heaven and hell at the same time. So he would choose where he wants to go. He goes to hell, and then he sees that there's a whole party going on. Jamming is going on. He goes to heaven, and they're just doing boring hymns. They said, no, he prefers to rather go to hell. When he goes back to hell this time around, it was fire. It was chaos, and it was burning. Then he asked about what happened to the jam. He said, oh, when he came the first time, it was campaigning. So the campaign is over. So, please, I beg you. The president has a reality he may not have known. And I like Kufuor's thing. You know when Kufuor took office at that point, he said, yes, he said this, he said that, but he didn't know. He is sorry.
About the size of government.
Yeah, about the size, not just about the size of government. Yes, that was the heart of it at the time. I think that something should be done. When you talk about the customers, there's certain equity that's required. I mean, I've been at the forefront of this fight for the investments that had gone into government securities. I'm very happy and proud to say the defense we built for the people to date, none of it has been breached. The commitments I had with the government signed with Dr. Amin Anta, former finance minister, and Akufo-Addo at the time has been honored to date, so that's done. But this locked up funds has to do with some institutions, not government directly. So it's also a bailout indirectly for these institutions that have collapsed. There's some engagement that should be done. I think that some fraction should be looked at, because a lot of it also includes a lot of interest that's accrued over time. But a conversation should be had.
Okay.
For the president's honor, it shouldn't reduce this to the campaign conversation. It shouldn't keep the people that much in hell. But
the people say until they hear from him.
Yes.
They are not taking outsourcing until they hear from him.
Outsourcing has a reality. Look, he hasn't got the fiscal space for it. So this conversation, and especially at the time you were having that conversation, there was no space for it. The IMF is gone. We have the PIC.
The president lied.
He didn't lie. He
lied to win power.
I think that his information was inaccurate in making that decision. I can't speak for him, but that kind of conversation and trying to act as a pledger.
Thank you.
At this time, I mean, it's neither here nor there. The reality today are two forcing campaign.
And Bobby Bansin to
there's some negotiation to be had.
Thank you, Bobby Bansin, for your patience. I'll come to you shortly, particularly for a second discussion we have to have. Yes, Japa. This is what you politicians you do.
I thought you were going to go to
sweet talkers.
My good friend.
Yes, Inusa. Let's hear from
before you come.
Let's hear from
so
him.
that I can deal with all the
Let's hear from Inusa.
The president never lied. Our president is an honest president. He says it when he means it, and says what he means. And so I have tremendous confidence in the president that he will redeem his pledge.
He said they will do it in the first year.
I'm coming to that. That's the second leg.
The finance minister said they can't do it.
That's the second leg.
So you are saying he will redeem what?
It.
The finance minister said it won't happen.
So when he gave a timeline, it was a statement of intent. Clearly. That when we come into office, this is what we want to do within 1 year. So that's an intention. Okay? To meet the legitimate expectation.
It's a firm pledge.
Yeah, it's a firm pledge. That firm pledge has not been shifted away. It's still a pledge. But the time duration has been overtaken by events that he came into office to meet.
You didn't listen to the finance minister?
Yes, because of what
he said
happened.
That will not happen.
That was not happening when the current because of the
there's some of them which will happen. Let's get it clear. I mean, commitment on things like cocoa bills. It's a government liability. It's direct. It has to be done.
But that's not locked up fund.
Yes, no, also by the AM
so
fund.
don't mix up. Don't mix
has to be paid.
Locked up funds.
It has to be paid. It will be paid.
The AM fund has to be paid.
It will be paid
because it's a commitment the state made at
First
the
of
time.
all, it will be paid
the AM fund
because some of the banks are still undergoing restructuring, and there are administrators, receivers, managing the funds, recovery, so they will be paid. But the statement that they will be paid within 1 year, in fact and indeed, was a statement of intent. The president had promised that he would pay them within 1 year, but that promise has been overtaken by events that we came to meet. And you cannot.
But those events were there when he was making.
But you were not managing the economy, so you will not know the extent of the rot that you were coming to meet. You will not know. I told you on your network here, when you asked me whether our fear was Baumia, you recall, and I told you that our fear was not Baumia. Our fear was the rot.
What to inherit?
What we will inherit.
Ejapa.
My. You see,
you who are in parliament, you follow this, but you should know all the facts.
The posture by my good friend Inusa takes me back to your tape, right? That you delivered this morning before the start of the show.
What is it
where we as politicians,
yes,
okay, are essentially destroying the fabric of our country. We are not honest with ourselves. We are not honest with the people of Ghana. Because otherwise, I don't see why you want to dance around statement of intent. The president was not managing the economy. He wasn't aware of what he was saying. Please.
So he was aware of what he was saying, but he wasn't aware of the situation. There are two things.
Respect. Every government makes choices. Every government.
But they have consequences.
Every choice has a consequence.
Yes.
Every choice you make has a consequence.
Yeah.
Akufo-Addo, His Excellency the President, could have opted when he was president that, well, Bank of Ghana has messed up. These banks and their directorships have messed up. The banks are on the verge of collapse. Let's allow them to collapse, and whoever loses his money has to deal with those banks and their shareholders. His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo could have opted to do that.
That's true.
But he didn't. He says, no, I can't sit and allow Ghanaians who have put their faith in the banking sector with the view that there was some regulator who was overseeing the activities of these banks, okay, and they had failed them. I'm going to take the hit and pay and make sure that people do not lose their livelihoods. He had a choice.
You're right.
You guys turned around and called him all sorts of names. Mr. Mahama in opposition knew. He'd been president before, for crying out loud. He knew the structure of our economy. He knew the difficulties that we're going through. He knew the structure of our budgets, that we're not going to be able to meet those obligations. Or that, in fact, if he's so minded to meet them, he can. So call him out. Call the president out. That Mr. President, stick to your commitment and pay the people whose funds are locked up.
He will pay.
That's what I expect from within a year. It's gone past.
He will pay.
I mean, it was never possible.
Please, let's not do this.
You're right.
Sule.
Well, so the president.
This is a president who had the benefit of the DKM situation and how that also became a political football, you know.
Well, the president made a promise. I doubt we can say that he lied. What I believe we can say is that he has failed to deliver that promise in terms of the timeline that was given.
But he has the opportunity to correct
that. Of course. He certainly still has the.
Do you know that they promised that they will pay the men's goal people? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And they didn't pay.
Seriously?
Of course, he did it.
The point that I was coming to.
I don't remember that. In our manifesto.
Is to also.
We are talking about your commentary, not manifesto.
Okay.
Is to also re-echo the points you raised in your take, and to say that my two brothers sitting here do know very well that during campaigning, they do really say a lot of things that within in their hearts they know wouldn't be possible to implement, but are things that are to be said basically for votes. And that is why, for example, today, the NDC would not want us to say a lot about the Galamsey menace. The MPP that was in government that also failed to manage it today would want to push it so hard that it should be done. And I want to also re-echo Ejape's point that, look, every government has choices. If the president thinks, it is not, yes, Honorable Atto-Forson is the finance minister, and he's supposed to be the day-to-day manager of our affairs. But we do know that whatever decisions he makes, or decisions he makes, are decisions that should be in line with the priorities of the president. If the president decides that I'm going to pay these people because I made a promise, and therefore whatever is being allocated to 24-hour economy markets should be allocated to that, it will be done. If the president decides that instead of building this hospital or that hospital and so on and so forth, my priority is to ensure that the people whose funds were locked up should be paid, I'm sure it will be done. Atto may not have, Atto can only advise that, Mr. President, if we do that, the implication will be this or that or that. But it will be the decision of the president.
So what should they be telling the people now? And in the course of this week, I've heard the groups, some of them on the news saying they want to hear from the president.
I think they are absolutely right. Mr. President made a very bold promise. And
with his right hand on his chest.
Gave a timeline. The timeline has long passed, almost 6 months on. And I think that it is only fair to demand that the president comes back to tell them whether, yes, I will still honor my promise, but please give me some little more time. By end of the year, I'm going to do it. Or, yes, I made a promise, but unfortunately for A, B, and C, I'm not able to do it now until perhaps when...
If he's unable to do it, it will constitute a scam.
Can you imagine?
Well, but...
Can you imagine?
But happens all the time.
What do you
imagine
he said he was coming to
how many of those statements
is that a reset that he promised the people of
making because there are too many things they promised.
Cut him any slack, please.
And he has to go and be telling everybody, I promise you this is not happening. Yes, I beg you.
No, but this is a very sensitive matter, yes, which was very public.
Yes.
To be fair to the MPP, they took the hit. They made their payments. They paid depositors. The president now has made this promise. We can only ask Mr. President to honorably honor it, or at least speak to the people. I think that there's a certain real difficulty. There has to be some negotiation on some of the but it has to be done.
Okay.
And it cannot be. It couldn't have been done in year one because of the fiscal constraints.
Thank you.
Year two, year three, they can
Bobby, thank you. Bobby, thank you. Even though we scheduled you for the next subject, you want to make some quick comments on this issue, particularly looking at the politicians and how they make their promises, and then some of it, I don't know, the people can tell that the things they are promising they can't do, but they still believe them.
Good morning, and good morning to Senior Fuseni and your colleagues, and very special good morning to my senior Santa, Ejapa Mesa. I like you said, the politicians in the heat of the campaign, going by the analogy of Senor Hosi, they make promises. I said, well, but we the people enable these kind of promises because we know the truth, but that is what we want to hear, and we hear them and we vote for them. I think that the whole banking crisis, I agree largely with the sentiments of almost every person that had commented on this morning. I think that it could have been done. There was no doubt that there was issues. There was no doubt that something had to be done. But I think that we could have done it, and then the impact would have been less than we experienced over the period. In any event, the approach was let's collapse the banks, let's merge them, and let's go after those that we think as a state they have engaged in some illegality. The question is, how far have we gone, or what is the effect of this approach? Whether the other approach of let's bail them out, let's keep their jobs, and let's see if we can go after those that we claim have engaged in any form of illegality. Well, posterity did not give us the opportunity to test that because we didn't use that approach. All said and done, the issue of the Court of Appeal decision, the Court of Appeal decision does not end the matter. I believe that the Bank of Ghana, if they get a copy of the judgment, may exercise their rights to appeal against the decision. It is something that for the guidance of future...
You wanted to say it ends the matter until appealed, right?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. That the Bank of Ghana, once they get a copy of the judgment, it's a final judgment, so they have a period of 3 months. They have a period of 3 months to exercise their right to file an appeal against that decision so that we can bring finality to it if they so decide to, because it will guide future regulatory practices by the Bank of Ghana so that this cycle, if it is indeed wrong, will not be repeated. If it was right, then it will be upheld. So those are my comments to what you've discussed so far.
All right, thank you very much, Bobby Bansing. And this program is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tanks is strong, it's tough. Safari Valley Eco Park, bringing you closer to nature. Gold Ball Jewelry, pure, precious, proudly Ghanaian. Malcolm, your #1 shopping destination. Waylead, your trusted home builder. Bethel Dental, the smile starts here. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, producing and providing excellence in healthcare. Kel Charcoal Toothpaste, happy smile. Okay, so now we want to check whether or not what it means when you are speaking. Freedom before, freedom after, where is the guarantee? And is there a clampdown on free speech by the Mahama administration? We'll be right back.